Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Podcast. My guest is Louise Gittleman. She's a multi-award-winning New York Times bestselling author of 30 books on weight loss, diet and detox, including women's health, men's health, perimenopause, menopause, beauty, and the environment. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, but one of the important ones is she has a new book that just came out, Radical Metabolism, a powerful new plan to blast fat and reignite your energy in just 21 days. That's a new book that just came out that listeners may want to check out. So, Anne, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, Rich, and you?
My voice is a little hoarse, which is ironic for a podcaster, but I'm doing okay. So I guess you'll be talking more than me, but we'll figure it out, you know?
Okie doke.
Yeah. So, I've noticed that anyone that writes in the health world and is a big advocate of health always has like their own personal story that got them into it. So if you don't mind, can you tell listeners like what led you to think about health and write so many books about it and make it a big focus of your life?
You know, Rich, that's a great question, and I think the easy answer is that I had very sensitive skin, and as a teenager and as an early adult, my skin would break out at the least provocation. I could look at chocolate and look at sugar and look at too much fruit, and my skin would break out immediately. So I learned early on that what I put in my body would show on the outside of my body as well, and so I was concerned about what I ate for good skin, and that, of course, started expanding into what I ate for my weight, what I ate for the health of my thyroid, my adrenals, my GI tract, and I think that was really the beginning of my long career. I've written over 35 books, and it all began with sensitive skin.
Oh, okay. And what's your evolution look like? Over time, when you first started changing what you ate and how you ran around. I bet it's probably different than now, because you've been involved in this for so many years. So how has your understanding of nutrition and health evolved over the past, 30 plus years?
Well, when I think about it, I was always on the right track when it came to sugar, and I recognized early on that even too much fructose or fruit sugar was detrimental, especially to my skin and an inflammatory response. And of course, a lot of that has been proven out lately in terms of the connection with high fructose corn syrup and even too much fructose in terms of overall health, as well as the health of your liver and your pancreas and the proliferation of cancer. So I think I was on the right track and even didn't know it early on. And I'd say what really changed was the whole concept of fat being a fattening agent in the diet, because we all got so fat on low fat. I was also the director of nutrition at the Pritikin Longevity Center, which was way back in the early 80s. And Pritikin was the harbinger of the no to low fat, high complex carbohydrate diet. And I was hired from my home state of Connecticut to come to the great state of California to teach everybody the horrors of fat, how demonized we need to make fat. And I learned early on that it really wasn't fat that was the problem. It was the right kind of fat. And I learned again that sugar was the real evildoer when it came to the standard American modality. So I'd say not too much really has shifted other than my whole perception of fat, the essential fatty acids, the omega-3s, the 6s, the 9s, and the 7s. And fat is now where it's at, Rich, and we can see that with the high keto diets, with the popularity of the vegan diets that are plant-based, with the plant-based oils, as well as paleo. So radical metabolism has really taken a page from all of those very popular diets and has just made the tweaks that is important for people to understand that when they're taking a high-fat diet, they have to be able to digest their fats or the fat goes nowhere. And so you have to be able to break it down. You have to understand that the secretion of bile is important. Bile is a very important digestive fluid for all the fats you're taking in. And without sufficient bile, you're not flushing toxins, nor are you revving your thyroid. So I discovered a very interesting connection between the gallbladder, believe it or not, or lack thereof, and thyroid and metabolism.
Oh, can you say more about that? Because, for instance, my wife had her gallbladder taken out a number of years ago, so she has tough with meals that have more fat in them. So she takes enzymes now with every meal. But I want to hear about this connection. What do you have to say about it?
Yeah, well, this is one of the premises of the book that the gallbladder is not a throwaway organ. I wish I had met your wife early on so we didn't have to take out her gallbladder. In most cases, that can be prevented if you figure out the underlying problems early on, whether it's not enough of the right kind of bile, whether the bile is becoming congested, whether you've got too much oxalate in the system, whether you're lacking hydrochloric acid. But what I basically discovered for this book, which I think is important for your wife, is that there are a number of Harvard medical researchers who found that individuals who improve their gallbladder health, they experienced a 53% increase in metabolism. And that's quite a huge jump. So that means the difference between constantly dieting without seeing any kind of results and watching pounds effortlessly fall off from your frame. I then went on to find that there was other information, there was other research, particularly that from Finland, which found that people with reduced bile flow, like people that don't have a gallbladder, are 7 times more likely to suffer from hypothyroidism. So we then learned that dietary fats supply the body with the raw materials that are actively needed to produce the real thyroid hormones. So this is a connection that most people have not made, and I just shudder to think of all the high-fat diets that are out there with people being unable to digest all of that fat successfully.
So what do you do, for instance, if you've had your gallbladder taken out? What can you do to improve your bile health?
Well, what you do is you take a gallbladder supports just the way you do if you don't have your thyroid. You take some sort of support, a glandular support. You can take herbal supports in terms of bitters. So it's not just the enzymes that are important in terms of the HCl or the pancreatic enzymes. It's important to take bile. So I'm always suggesting that you use bile salts or you use some sort of herbal bitter that is a substitute for the bile salts, which comes from an animal product. There are also foods in the book that you can use to really thin the bile so that every time that you're taking a meal in that contains fat, you're not only digesting it, you're utilizing it for the essential fatty acids that you need for the vitamins A, D, E, and K. So there's a whole line of uncomfortable side effects that happen when some people have their gallbladders out. A lot of people can't lose weight after a while. They get dizzy, they get very bloated, they've got radiating leg pain, even insomnia. You'd be surprised at the seemingly disconnected symptoms that go hand in hand with problems when people have their gallbladders taken out.
So you're saying you actually can take bile in pill form or some other form to replace bile that you're not producing?
You can. It's the bile salts. I talk about it in the book. I give you a
Salts.
formula that's really helpful. Yes, you can get it at the health food store. It's bile salts, ox bile, which is easily found in the health food stores. And it's a concept that was very popular in the turn of the century, where we found that many of the early on pioneers would talk about the importance of bile. You don't hear about it anymore, but I'm hopeful that people will now find bile very sexy and very current because there's so many high-fat diets where people are not digesting their fats properly.
Okay. Another thing I saw in one of your publications, it talked about, it said, hey, are you tired all the time? And it seems like I've run into a number of women that say that, they're just tired every day, all day, and they don't know why, and they don't think it's fibromyalgia. Any experience in that realm with women's health and being tired all the time? What's the cause?
Oh, yeah, because sluggish bile could be slowing the thyroid. What we found is that the suboptimal bile flow and low thyroid, which creates the fatigue, go hand in hand. So this is where the importance of digesting your fats come into play. This is where the importance of supporting your thyroid comes into play. Not having a lot of food that's high in fluoride, for example, which I touch upon in the book, which is very highly concentrated in green tea, white tea, and black tea, as well as kombucha. So I take people off of all of these so-called healthy products, and voila, their energy returns almost overnight.
Any other reasons? What if someone has a gallbladder and they, I guess they seem to be okay, but they're just tired all the time? Any other main drivers of it that you've seen?
Well, you've got issues with some of the important minerals or the chemicals that are out there that can supplant iodine in the thyroid. So whether that's fluoride or whether that's bromide or whether that's chlorine, you've got to check your water, check your toothpaste, check the kind of beverages that you're drinking. There are issues in that regard. Some people have parasites, which is another issue that we lightly cover in the book that could be draining their energy. Or they're on adrenal overload, which could be sapping the thyroid. So there are lots of underlying causes. You have to get to the root cause because something is not going correctly. Or, and this is going to be a real hot spot because I know that your listening audience is very tech savvy, you're so involved with your cell phone and high tech that you're being zapped because of all the EMS that are surrounding you morning, noon, and night, which affects cortisol levels in your system.
Oh, how have you seen that affects cortisol?
Because it can affect the highs and the lows of cortisol. It also can break down DNA. So we have a lot of people that have smart meters that can't sleep and are very tired, have loads of headaches. So we tell them to get some sort of smart meter guard wherever that smart meter is placed. We tell people to shut the electricity off at night. We also tell people to stop wearing any kind of electromagnetic device that could be affecting the way that their heart and their brain are functioning. So all of that is like subtle electromagnetic pollution, or what we call electropollution. So yes, it affects your adrenals, and that's where the ups and downs of the cortisol come into play until you go into stage 2 or stage 3 adrenal burnout. So that's a big issue which nobody has talked about. It's kind of like the pink elephant dancing in the middle of the room.
Yeah, I've also run into a lot of people that seem to be just stressed all the time, and I know they're trying meditation and other things to reduce their stress, and I'm sure it's affecting their cortisol levels. But what do you say to people that just they feel stressed all the time? Any recommendations on how to make themselves feel better with diet or changing their environment?
Well, first they have to have enough protein in the morning, Rich. So I think protein is very important. We need at least 100 grams of protein, especially with adults over the age of 50, I would suggest. So that's important, at least an hour after you get up in the morning, number one. Number two, there are two very important nutrients. One of them is magnesium at 5 milligrams per pound of body weight. And the other is an old-fashioned vitamin, which is a B vitamin called pantothenic acid, which is the stress vitamin. Most people are highly deficient, so I would be taking anywhere from 1 to 2 grams of the pantothenic acid. So these are things that can easily be dealt with food, with sleep, with meditation, with lifestyle. We all know the drill, but we're not doing it.
It's true. Yeah, it's funny. I'm not, well, I don't want to say I'm not that old. I am what I am. I'm 43. And I remember growing up, in the 80s, and there would be like a token fat kid, but it was rare. And now, I look around, and, myself included, like so many people are overweight. What do you think has changed, over the past 30 some odd years where, so little of the population was overweight, and now so much more is?
Well, I grew up in the 60s, so I see it even more dramatically than you do. I think a lot of it is eating the wrong foods, not eating the right kinds of fats, the essential fatty acids, the hemp seed oil that I write about in Radical Metabolism. I see a deficiency of the right kind of minerals in the diet. I see too much sugar, too many simple sugars, and too much fruit, where people don't realize that fruit is sugar, is sugar, is sugar. So the point is that I think that what we think may be natural may not be good for our metabolism as we get older, and the metabolism seems to slow down because of all these elements that we talked about, the electropollution, the lack of proper mineralization in the soil, and all the stress that people are just putting on themselves by just juggling their home, family, and career. So I think there's a multitude of reasons, but it's the sugar, the carbohydrates, and the lack of the right kind of fats that I think are the real drivers.
Yeah, it's amazing the change. Like you said, you grew up in the 60s. When you looked around back then, I would guess, very few people were overweight. Now you look around, I mean, it's unbelievable, the change to me. And, I think what's changed? People are the same. Our genes haven't changed seemingly or anything in this short period of time. So it's got to be the food. It's not like people are not exercising and they used to exercise like crazy. So the only thing left to point at is the food.
Well, it's the food, and it's and I travel a great deal, Rich, and I'm in the airports, and people used to do a lot of walking up and down, the terminals, especially if they were waiting for a plane or a change in plane and so forth. I see everybody that's just glued to their phone, so I think it's a lack of exercise, and I truly think it's a lack of movement as well.
Okay. So what issues, I pointed out issues I see around, but I really should have asked you, like, what issues do you see are the big ones that are haunting or troubling people nowadays, health-wise?
Fatigue is a big one, as we spoke about, and that's where the adrenals come into play, the lack of the right vitamins. That's where the pantothenic acid that I mentioned is so important. That's where magnesium perhaps is important to kind of de-stress. People are not sleeping the way they should, maybe because of the smart meters and all the EMFs that could be in their bedrooms at night. So we've got issues like that. We also have issues with people that I think are very intolerant to certain foods in the diet because of all the glyphosate that's being used in the grain. So you have people that are not getting enough fiber in their diets because of their sensitivities to wheat and other grains like brown rice, for example. I never used to see that years ago, but I think the glyphosate has an awful lot to do with this.
The glyphosate, is that part of Monsanto's Roundup weed killer, or where does glyphosate come from?
That's exactly what it is. Yes, indeed. And we're seeing so many people. We can now test for it, Rich, and I'm seeing so many people that have real sensitivities, and so then that makes them not being able to eat a lot of these foods in which the glyphosate or the Roundup is used so prolifically. So then they're not eating the fiber that they need, which is so important to get things moving, literally and figuratively. So I think there's just a compendium of factors, but it's really the environment. This is not our mother's environment or our grandmother's world anymore. It's much more challenging, so you have to really understand that the maintenance is a little bit higher and you have to go out of your way to eat properly, supplement, sleep, meditate, do whatever it takes to get your body to be an invincible fortress.
So if someone's not feeling good, either they're tired or they have brain fog or they're overweight, whatever, they're just not feeling good. They're not feeling or looking as they want to. How do they know what steps to take and in what order? What's like a general recommendation on how they figure out what's going on and how to fix it?
Well, they have to be able to read their own blood tests, and they have to understand that normal levels are far from normal in this day and age. So we have to look at a CBC, see where their white blood count is. If it's really lower than 5, most of the times there could be some sort of retrovirus or other kind of virus impacting their immune system. That would be number 1. Number 2, if they have high eosinophils, they may have a parasitic infestation. That would be number 2. Number 3, check your ferritin, which is iron storage. We're seeing a lot of people that are cooking in cast iron these days thinking it's a healthful way to cook, and they're stockpiling iron, which can create a kind of anemia and fatigue. So you have to take a blood test to know exactly what your target driver is, and from there you consult a nutritionist like Louise Gittleman or somebody like me who can actually walk your way through all this and tell you what to do healthfully and naturally.
Well, what worries me is I had an issue. I had my thyroid taken out, so I go to an endocrinologist. And the clinic is also like a diabetes clinic, and I see in the diabetes side they have like all these snack bars that they sell and artificial sweetener stuff and all that. So I personally don't have much hope that a lot of people, even if they go to a nutritionist, are getting the right counseling. They're probably just being given, I don't know, artificial sweetener garbage, in my opinion. So how do people find a nutritionist that knows what they're talking about?
So you go to a functional medicine nutritionist or somebody that's schooled in integrative and alternative methods of nutrition, from the Nutritional Therapy Association, for example, or as a certified nutrition specialist from the Certified Nutrition Specialty Organizations. There are lots of ways to be able to analyze that, and anybody can drop me a note and I can certainly help them find their way and navigate their way through this kind of maze that we have. There are many, many good nutritionists that are out there that are integrative, that are functional, that are alternative, and I think it's pretty easy if you just get out of mainstream medicine.
Okay, so people should look for functional medicine doctors.
Yeah, that's able to look for root causes. So we want functional medicine. I mean, the operative word there is functional, that can read a blood test, teach you what to look for, and teach you what the normal, optimal, healthy levels are, not just the lab levels, which show you the range of all the sick people that are out there, but you want to know what's optimally healthy. I mean, so it's a minefield, but if you've been in the field as long as I have, you know that there's certain guideposts and there's certain real standby nutrients and glandulars and lifestyle habits that will really see us through. These are very toxic times, so you have to become very strong in body, mind, and spirit, Rich.
So if I get a complete blood panel and I get my results back and it says everything is quote unquote normal, that doesn't necessarily, like, for instance, my wife has done this and she's gotten stuff back and everything looks quote unquote normal, but she still feels the way she feels, for instance. So I guess that's probably a common occurrence, right? Even if people do get a blood test, the
It's
levels
all
may look
too
okay,
common,
but they're
so
not really.
that's all too common because normal is not normal. It's just the
Mm.
average of what the lab finds from the healthiest to the sickest. So that doesn't
Mm.
mean it's completely normal. You want somebody that can evaluate something which is optimally healthy. I've seen this time and time again where I have clients that send me blood work and I find something that sticks out like a sore thumb, whether it's a cholesterol level which is overrated or too high, simply because they're on thyroid medication or they're not balancing their thyroid properly, or triglycerides that are over the edge. And the doctors say nothing about that when in fact I know that they're eating too much fruit or they're taking too much wine or too much liquor or something of that nature. And so just simple tweaks are necessary. This isn't rocket chemistry. They're just simple basic tweaks that I think we need to
Mm.
employ for somebody that knows what the heck they're looking at. The majority do not.
Okay, all right. And I guess the people that get their blood work done and everything looks normal, they probably feel like they're crazy because the normal doctors say, "Hey, you're fine," but they say, "No, I'm not fine."
Well, they're not crazy. They have to be looking in the right place is just what the issue is. So they've got to find the right practitioner to kind of guide them. That's what the whole challenge is, I'd say, in this day and age. Is finding the right person that has the right background that's able to guide you and then employ the right diet, the supplements, the food changes, the exercise changes, the meditation, stress relief. I mean, it's all part of the package right now.
Hmm. You mentioned thyroid a whole bunch of times. What are you seeing nowadays? Do you deal with a lot of people that have had their thyroids taken out, and what kind of considerations should they have? Do you deal with people with hypo or hyperthyroid? You mentioned it a lot, so that's why I asked.
Well, because it's part of my book, because radical metabolism really focuses on no to slow losers that have problems with thyroid metabolism. I see hyper, I see hypo, I see autoimmune issues. And what I tell people is here's what the norms are. Here's what's optimally normal for your T4, your T3, your reverse T3, your TSH. This is what we know from a functional medicine perspective. If it's above or below, we have to supplement with this nutrient or that nutrient or make a change here or there. So my people are very, geared to doing the right thing. And then when they start to lose weight, they start to get more energy, they start to regain their hair, start to lose their constipation, then they know they're on the right track.
Yeah, what about people? So there's the hypers and the hypos and the autoimmune problems. What about people, again, that have had like their thyroid taken out and they take, the thyroid hormone? Do they have different challenges? What happens with them? Or are they fine?
No, they have the same challenges. There's certain things that are optimally normal, and most likely those are the individuals that we feel need a little bit of the T4 and the T3. You need something like Armour thyroid. You need the whole glandular, not just a T4 or just a T3. And that has to be monitored because as you get older, things shift and change.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's not black and white. It's very, very individual. Do you have a problem with overweight, Rich?
Oh yeah, well I personally for quite a long time, and I actually had thyroid cancer last year, and I had my thyroid taken out, so I take Synthroid and stuff like that. But so far I feel okay on it. But I guess things can happen and change, so we'll see.
Well, I wish you luck.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm gonna pick up a copy of your book and check it out and stuff like that, and maybe we'll we'll talk more offline. But
I hope so. You're invited to certainly be in touch. I'd love to be able to help you. And remember that you go to radicalmetabolism.com to get all the free downloads.
Okay, all right. So again, for listeners, if they just don't feel well for various reasons, sounds like first thing they should do is get a full blood work done, and I guess then consult a functional medical doctor and pick up your book, and that would be a great start to getting them on the road to making them feel better, right?
They can, or they can contact me at AnnLouise@AnnLouise.com, and I can kind of guide them if I know where they live. I know quite a few good people in the area. Being around as long as I've been, I have a repertoire of people that I can refer to.
Okay. Well, that's excellent. So yeah, let's give that URL. We're at the end of the call, so let's give the URL and the name of the book again. So it's radicalmetabolism.com?
You got it. It's radicalmetabolism.com for 3 free downloads and a 30% off coffee coupon to the best coffee in the country that will actually help you lose weight, not make you feel jittery, and then they're free to contact me if they would like.
Okay, that's great. Well, Ann, I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
My pleasure, Rich. I wish you all the luck and health in the world, as well as to your wife.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.